All right, so welcome everyone to Getting Started with Java. Of course, if we were in person, I'd ask for a show of hands who is already familiar with the language, but of course we can't do that necessarily. So, if you have any questions that, because you're not as familiar with Java as is, please, interrupt and ask, and we can answer that for you. All right. My mouse is not, oh, there we go. It's slow to respond. All right. I know a lot of you may have been around in the last session, but for those of you who may not have been, my name is Michael Redlick. I work for ExxonMobil Research and Engineering in Clinton, New Jersey, and that's what the Petrochemical Research Organization means. And with 32 plus years, with the company, I'm actually planning to retire in less than 2. So it's been a great career. In my spare time, however, I do a lot in the Java community. I write Java news for InfoQ, and I've been doing that for 6 years now. I'm currently the lead editor for the Java space, and I've been running the Garden State Java user group, for 21 years, but 19 and a half of that was under the ACG&J Java user group. We rebranded and went off on our own in October of 2020. I'm on the leadership committee of the Jakarta EE Ambassadors. It's EE is for Enterprise Edition, and this goes back to when it was the Java EE or the Java EE Guardians. And if I have some time at the end, I'll get into the difference between Java Enterprise Edition and Jakarta EE or Jakarta Enterprise Edition. So that's a little bit about what I do. So the objectives today, what is Java, how it's evolved over the past 26 years, I want to say, some of the features, maybe a quick review of object-oriented programming, and we'll go from there. So we'll talk about some of the things, what's going on in Java now, and let's see. Oh, getting started with Java, introduce the class mechanism, right, and how to implement and all that other good stuff. So, all right. This quote from James Gosling is just classic. And I remember I had, I attended a talk by Brian Getz, who's a Java language architect at Oracle. And he used this in a slide, and it was great. That's the fact that he used it. And, I found this a long time ago. But Java is C++ without guns, knives, and clubs. And Java is based on C++, but it doesn't have pointers, for example, and other things too. And this was Sun Microsystems, which was purchased by Oracle in 2010. But Sun Microsystems was the company that was responsible for the release of Java itself. And you see a lot of attributes that Java is simple, object-oriented, distributed, and so on, as you can see in this quote from them. Okay, it's a little bit slow to respond here for some reason. Okay. So James Gosling, as I mentioned, he was considered the father of Java, and Patrick Naughton was also credited with that. And I'm sure there were others that had, were part of that original, creation of the language. It was, I don't know if it's urban legend or not, but it was originally called Oak. The urban legend part is that there was an oak tree outside of James Gosling's office, and that's why he called it Oak. But because it was used elsewhere, they had to change the name, and they came up with Java. Back in that day, it was designed for consumer applications, embedded systems, talk about a little bit more of that, but it had to be architecture agnostic, and it had to be object oriented. That was just something that, was required for putting together this language. There was a project known as Star 7 in 1994, but that ultimately dissolved. But soon after that, Java was introduced at the Sun World Conference in 1995. And some of us are old enough to remember the Hot Java browser, which was, big back then. There might be some some source code in order to build it yourself. But it's hard really to find these days. Oh, okay. All right. So features of Java. I added a couple of things today, this morning, because of how the language has evolved over the past couple of years. It is, of course, an object-oriented programming language. The documentation generation is really cool. You can actually add comments to your code, and then run what's called the Java doc utility, and then it actually creates a documentation that looks just like the regular documentation that you would find in the Java programming language. Which is really cool. In the early days of Java, you had applets, and this is one of the, like Java 1.0, for example, like in 1996 was, the applets. Those were the cute little animated things that you would see all over the place. It was very popular, but I think by Java 9, if I'm not mistaken, they were gone. So it's just, applications. So I kind of put that there with the strike through just to, show what, some of the history. The exception handling is very comprehensive. If you don't like typing, there's extremely long names for the classes for exception handling, but it is quite a good mechanism for exiting your applications gracefully, whatever, that kind of thing. There's the Java database connectivity, or JDBC. This is a way to connect to simple databases to get some, data out. There are other tools that are out there, third party, that are Java related and all that, but this isn't included in the language. Java beans. I touched on that earlier. What a bean is, it's has to do with the members and the methods with getter and setter methods, where you precede the method name with get, and then if it's get win, as in like number of wins for a sports team, the win itself for the data member would be lowercase w, but then get win would be uppercase, and this is basically required, among other things. But new since Java 16 and Java 17, these records and sealed classes. Records is basically a new type that you don't have to define all those getters and setter methods. And sealed classes control what you can be extended and what can't. So this is pretty much brand new. There used to be the enterprise Java beans that was very complex. Could be difficult to understand. I dabbled in a little bit of that in the early days of the Java group, but it was a lot of work. And for all intents and purposes, Jakarta EE has deprecated the enterprise Java beans specification itself. So that's why I crossed out the beans part there. And the best thing is there are no pointers in the Java programming language. Those of you who may have been up till 3 in the morning chasing down a core dump because you forgot to add an ampersand in your parameter might appreciate this. All right, we're going to go through this pretty quickly. You can take a look at the more comprehensive presentation on object-oriented programming, but there's 4 main attributes: encapsulation, abstraction, inheritance, and polymorphism. The abstract data type is a user-defined data type that you, the developer, define, and you create the objects, the functions or the methods, or it's the use of objects, but you control that of how to access the data in your application. There's a difference between an interface and an implementation in which those methods are provided in an abstract data type that will allow that access to data. If in the last session, you may have seen I had a set method and just for one of those data members. And the implementation essentially is an underlying data structure, like a linked list or an array or a vector that's within that abstract data type. So on how you handle the data itself. And then the differences between class and object, you define a model, declare attributes and behavior, and the class itself is an abstract data type, but the object is, creating or making that class live. It's what's known as instantiation, or creating an instance of a class. And because you've declared those attributes and behavior, they now have state and have behavior. And you can create many unique objects of the same class. So you have a car class, for example, but then you have a variable car01. You create it with one set of parameters, and variable car02 will have another set of parameters, and so on. So the advantages of object-oriented programming is that the interface can, and then more importantly, should remain unchanged when improving the implementation. So it's very important if you're putting out something, an open source, or putting out, some kind of application for developers to use. Basically, if you go to change it down the road, you should keep those methods exactly the same, because then now client code has to be changed if you change the interface, and people will not be happy with you. There's a lot better modularity in application development because the methods tend to be a lot smaller. You don't have 100-line, method. It's 4, 5, 6 lines, let's say. Even a lot of them only one. Getter methods, for example, return the value of a particular data member. About 1 line of code. So, and that's obviously easier to maintain, for that application. And it's an emphasis on what and not how. All right. So Java keywords. These are the most important ones. Class, the new keyword, private, protected, public, and package are access specifiers. Private means that no outside class can access it unless you, of course, provide it, but by default, they can't. Protected is, some combination of public, which of course is open, and then package is, if you have, when you break things down into packages, which I'll show you later on, if you have package access, any of those Java files will have access to each other in that particular package. Exception handling uses the try, throw, and catch keywords, and then finally as well. However, finally is going to go away. I forget if it's going to be deprecated in Java 18. I'd have to double check that. Java 18 comes out next Tuesday. I mentioned that in the slide later on anyway, but they're looking to get rid of it. I have to study as to why, because what the finally clause did was essentially close those resources if you hit an exception. All right. So there's a try. You try some kind of code that could throw an exception. There's somewhere along the line you throw an exception if something goes wrong, like you can't open a file if the file doesn't exist, and then you catch the exception, and that's where you handle things gracefully. You can close stuff. You can just say, put an error to the screen, resume normally, or log things, things like this. The final keyword means that you can't change it. So if you have a, final int I equals 1, you cannot change that programmatically. The extends keyword has to do with the base class and derived class relationship. So this is a relationship between, two classes, and basically the derived class inherits everything from the base class. The implements keyword basically has to do with an interface, which you see at the bottom there. You create an interface that has empty or undefined methods, and then they get implemented in another class. And I showed an example of that in the last session as well. An abstract basically says that this class is abstract because it has at least one declared member, or a member function, I should say. Okay. All right, so classes. User-defined abstract data type that you, the developer, put together. Those of you familiar with C, there's the struct mechanism. But in here, you can have a constructor, data members, and member functions or methods. Member functions tend to be used in the C++ world and methods in the Java world, but since I was experienced in both, sometimes I use them both interchangeably. And dynamic object instantiation, you can have multiple constructors. It's good to have a default constructor that has no parameters, and in case there's a need to do that, for some kind of default object. So you would basically have an empty parameter set in the name of the class itself. So in this case, sports is a class, but then the primary constructor, at least as I refer to it as such, will take a series of parameters, as you see in the example, a string, an int, and an int. And in this case, what I'm going to do is model a sports application that takes the name of the team, the number of wins, and the number of losses. An abstract class contains at least one abstract method in the Java space and one pure virtual member function, as they call it in the C++ world. To define a pure virtual member function in C++, you do this very bizarre assignment of the draw method to 0, and you see the virtual keyword. Void is the return type, so it returns nothing, and draw, of course, is the name of the method. In Java, you use the abstract keyword, and you'll see here it's public in this case, abstract, and again, it's the same method signature of the name and the return type itself. And this may look familiar for those of you who attended the last session. This is some class inheritance. So I have an application that does this. And so sports is the base class. As you'll see the team name, the wins and losses, but the percentage is calculated. All right, so it's not going to be passed in to the constructor. So it's going to be created real time with the values passed in for the wins and losses. And baseball it inherits everything from sports. Football and basketball do the same. However, you'll notice that there is an extra data member in there known as tie. Because, baseball, of course, they don't have ties. They play all day until somebody wins. And then football and basketball, they'll play a certain number of overtime and then declare it a tie. So I found this on this website that you see at the bottom here. Basically, I think it's a great way to show the construct of the hello world, application here. So yeah, public class, right? So that's the keywords there. And the name of the class in this case is hello world. You can call it Fred, you can call it whatever. And then public static void is consistent in the main method. So main is the entry point of any Java application, the same as C+ or C or C++. You pass in, well, you can pass in even if you don't, but that's always going to be standard of the array of string and the variable name of args, right? And then the built-in system, class themselves, there's system.out, the system.gc for garbage collector. Well, this is how you print out to the screen, and then whatever text as you see hello world in there. All right, so here's a partial listing. We'll get into the application itself in a little bit, but very similar here as you saw on that last slide. I have a default constructor, right? And oh, for space, I didn't include the other members here, but you see here, private string team, private int win, a default constructor, a primary constructor, and then a get win method. Now, I mentioned the beans before. So win is WIN, all lowercase. Get win is preceded by get, and then you capitalize W from the variable itself, in this case, win. And again, it was one line of code, return win. That's it. So the assignments happen in the constructor. So you can envision having getter methods for the team name, the number of losses. Okay. Now you create that relationship between parent and child, or a base class and derived class. So you have the class keyword, the name baseball. It extends sports. So that's how you create that relationship. So this class has its own constructors similar to the sports-based class in the last slide. And you can use this keyword or method or defined method known as super, and it actually then ties back to the constructor of the base class. And I think I have that in the example here. Dynamic instantiation is done this way. So baseball is the type, and Mets is the variable. So synonymous to int I. Okay, and you use the equals new keyword, and then you would use the constructor as defined in the last slide on baseball, and then pass in a string and 2 integers. So that's why I'm using Mets in 97 and 65. Okay. When you delete an object, okay, so the top 2 lines, the top line, I could say, is just wrapped around, is how you created it. But in the Java world, you don't have to worry about memory management, because there is this garbage collector that is within the Java virtual machine. And garbage collection is in itself a whole area of study that there are obvious, there are other garbage collectors out there. Even Java itself is experimenting with new ones, and so on. But you can use the system.gc call. However, it's not guaranteed it's going to be doing it right away, because it's always maintaining. It's very complex on how it maintains open or live objects that are being used, and there's different statuses in which they get moved. If they're older, that kind of thing. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of good presentations on garbage collecting that are out there. So if you want to learn more. All right, the Java Development Kit. Okay, it's available from the Oracle website, and I just love still using the old javasun.com, and I tested it this morning. It still works. Then of course it resolves to the Oracle website. The standard edition is what's available from the website. So there's a difference between Java EE Enterprise Edition and Java SE, which is the standard edition. There is, let's see, there is the open source, or what's called OpenJDK, where people can contribute or create a downstream distribution of Java SE from the OpenJDK. Oracle has gone to a 6-month release cycle since Java 9 was released in 2017. So it's always in March and September, and Java 18 is scheduled to go out this coming Tuesday. One of the things that they've done with this release cycle is that they've provided incubation and preview features of various things. So I forget the exact details, but like the records, would have been a preview feature in, like, say, Java 15, and then, finalized in Java 16. And I don't think that's 100% accurate, but you get the idea. So there's a lot of that going on with all new features, with this 6-month release cycle. So so basically you shouldn't be using it in production code. But you can have a chance to experiment with it, and get a feel for it until it's finalized. Jakarta EE, I have a minute here, is formerly Java EE. Back in 2016, Oracle was a little bit slow in getting out Java EE 8. And a couple of years have gone by, and just long story short is that they kept delaying the release of it. When it finally happened, in I think it was 2017, they put out Java EE 8, and then they donated it to the Eclipse Foundation. Now, this was all closed source. The intent for the donation to Eclipse was to make it open source. So now developers can contribute to this. But as a result of that, because of branding issues, they could not use, or Eclipse Foundation could not use the Java name. So there was a contest, or for people to come up with a new name, and it was Jakarta Enterprise Edition, or Jakarta EE was born from that. And what happened there was there's a Java EE8, which is still supported, I believe. All right. And when Jakarta EE8 was released, maybe I wouldn't want to say a year later, it was exactly the same as Java EE, just to make things simple, so that people can migrate over from one to the other if they want. Now, Jakarta EE9 was at the end of 2020, I believe, was what they call the release with the big bang, and by that I mean the Java X namespace for Enterprise Edition. Again, that was another branding issue from Oracle. They came up with the Jakarta namespace. So Jakarta EE9 was the migration of the Java X namespace to Jakarta. So that was a big deal. And then 9.1 was released last May, and 10, Jakarta EE10 will be out at the end of May this year. At least that's what they're currently saying. So anyway, so I just wanted to give that background information because that was a huge deal in Enterprise Edition evolving and being more accessible to developers, and for developers to contribute to that. So I wanted to spend some time on that. Okay, working with Java. So you would, this is all, all the old school, command line stuff. I just wanted to put that out there still. I mean, if you, are using an IDE such as IntelliJ, or, some of the other ones I'm going to show you later, you can set up all these in your environment. So this is both the Windows and the Linux. So the source code has the .java extension, and then upon successfully compiling that code, there's a .class file. And this is what's interpreted by the Java Virtual Machine, or JVM. Now, I have to admit here, I had a tough time this morning, doing this on the command line, because I'm so used to using Gradle, as you saw in the last session, using the Gradle build tool, and you can execute things and all that, that I wanted to actually demo the old way, but it just didn't work. And I don't know why, but I was running out of time. So in any event, yeah, the Java C utility is how you compile, right? So there's a whole bunch of parameters, and you can look at on your own. And then there's the Java utility that will run the application itself. And I mentioned Java Doc, that's another one. JConsole, there's a whole bunch of other utilities that are part of the JDK. All right. Now, if you're using Maven or Gradle, there's some convention that is used, and I think this is why I had trouble, because the old days, you didn't, before those build tools really evolved, you didn't have that source main Java folder as on the last line of the on the slide here, right? So yeah, and so the source main Java is assumed by Maven and Gradle, because you have source main / resources or test to have your test code. Of course, it's always good to have to test your application as you go as well. So there's a whole big convention over this. So. Oh, there it goes. Okay. I don't know why it's a little bit slow here this morning, but all right. So, I use, oh, I just saw some redundancy there. So, my directory tends to be, under Java apps, And then from there, you know, there's extra folders, TCF, hello, source, org, Redlick. Okay. But there's no source. Oh, okay, sorry to fix that. But there's no source main Java in this particular slide. But my point is to do a package name, it corresponds to what you see in green. Right? And you can call this whatever you like, of course. Okay, a lot of times you'll see, you know, com/hibernate, you know, whatever. All right. So those kinds of things. But then your package name for each Java file should reflect that. So, all right, time for a demo. We go to 12:15. Wow, wow. Time goes fast, I tell you. All right. Oops. Okay. Let me get set up here. Probably close all these. No, let's just go there for now. Sports. All right. So you saw a little bit of this. This is in the way again here. Yeah. All right, we'll deal with it. All right, so I saw a little bit of this in one of the slides, but here's the whole, you know, the whole class itself. All right. Okay, so here's the package name, org Redlick Sports, and this is, let's go there here as well. So, CD apps, right? Java apps, okay, JDK, I think. Oh no, wait, I was presentation, sorry. Presentation, CD, TCF, and then Java, I think, yeah. All right, there we go, okay. All right, so if you do an LS, you see there's a sports, well, actually I should do a tree. All right, so you'll see the tree itself, source main Java, you know, source main Java, right? And then from there, you can do whatever you want, you know, in this case, that. And these are the, you know, all the Java files there. So that's reflected in my IDE. I use IntelliJ IDEA. That's my favorite. There are others out there I'm going to mention, so you choose yours, right? But so the sports class itself, okay, we'll do it this way here. Yeah, so here's the package name, all right, and then I'm importing just a decimal format class from the, you know, from Java, so just to make things more pretty. So I'm storing here the team name, wins, loss, tie, and the percentage, which gets calculated. I have a default constructor in case we need to do that, and then a primary constructor that takes the you know, a string and oh, okay. So what I decided to do was to include the tie member, and then just in the case of baseball, set that tie member to 0, and then just not use it or something like that. Oh, and this is what I was talking about earlier with Java Doc and automatic documentation. This is how you format your comments. So here's like a name, and then you know, at param. So you have various you know, sort of the keys, I guess, as they were, to, you know, to write out to your documentation. I'm using a set of setters. All right, set team, set win, set loss. Again, the whole Java bean type of you know, convention, and then set percentage. Okay, these are the getters. We've seen these before, right? Set team, I'm using this keyword, which refers to the object in control, okay, which is the class itself. So this dot team refers to team here, okay, and the same thing with the others, okay. And then on the opposite side of that assignment, okay, here's the team name. So set.team refers to the one up defined, and then what's being passed in is on the right-hand side of the assignment. So that's how you do that. And this avoids having to come up with additional you know, or different variable names. It's just nice shorthand, I think. All right. So everything else is pretty much, you know, straightforward. You know, setters, getters, right? You've seen this already. So get percentage, all right, oh, get the set the percentage, all right? So it takes in all three. So it takes in all three, wins, loss, and ties, and does a check. We don't want to divide by 0. All right. So if both wins and losses are 0, then just assign percentage, PCT to 0. Otherwise, now you can do your calculation. Okay. And here's a display method. And this display method is the generic one. All right. And I have some formatting here, the decimal format class, okay, for various things. So I created DF1, DF2. One pattern is just 2 spaces, all right, with no decimal. And this one here has 3 decimal, 3 decimals after the decimal point, or three value, or 3 letters. 3 digits after the decimal point. Sorry. And then I'm just system that out print line. I use the getter methods and and whatnot to put everything out there. So all right. And then a toString method here basically is a way to do something similar as in the display method. And so I just put this here as just a placeholder to show how we use something like that. So let's look at baseball. Now, baseball, as you know, does not have any ties. And there we go. Oops. All right. All right. So here's that connection, using the extends keyword, right? So here's that use of the super method. So this calls the base class and says, please use my constructor. Please use that. Same thing here. I use super and then pass in these variables. Now you notice here I snuck in a 0 for the tie. And I found this more efficient than using the tie method for football, baseball, and any other sport that has ties, because it seems to be baseball is more unique in that regard over the other sports. Now, yeah. So here's a display method for baseball. The difference is there is no get tie method in this, as in the sports one, right? So here's get tie, but it's not in baseball. All right. So this is part of polymorphism. So you're using the same method name, but it's used differently in this case. Now football and you'll notice here that I just defined the constructors for football, because what sports is offering is sufficient in this case. All right. And the same thing with I thought I had, well, I may have hockey or something like that in there, but yeah, you get the idea. What else do we have? Basketball. Yeah. Oh, and then the main sports app. So what I define here is, oops. Back there. There we go. All right. But yeah. So create a new sports app. I have this display header, which is down here. Yeah, so just calling an extra method for that. It's a little bit of overhead, I suppose, but and then create. Now, okay, so here's something. This is programming to almost like programming to interfaces, or to a base class in this case. Because baseball is a sport, I can declare this as sports, instead of baseball. All right. And then I create all the constructors accordingly. Okay. You may ask, Mike, you're in New Jersey, why are you a Saints fan? And that's because my wife and I go to New Orleans quite a bit. Yeah. So yeah, those are the different ways I'm doing that. And and so in this case, when baseball comes along, using the display method, it'll call the one that's in the baseball class. But then in football and hockey and in basketball, it's going to use the display method from the sports class itself. So when we run this, okay. I think I had Gradle here, right? Yeah. So I'm using Gradle as a build tool. There's also Maven out there. And then those of you who may be old enough, there's Ant, which is one of the first ones I used. Clean, compile Java, and run. Okay, so basically a very simple output here. Basically what's been signed in. So now you see here the differences. So in Saints, Devils, and Nets, you'll see wins, losses, and ties, but you don't see it here for the Mets entry. All right, so very simple, very easy to use. I guess Gradle 8 is going to come out at some point, so there's some deprecation here going on. But I don't like warnings, so I always try to make sure I clean all that up. So all right, what time is it? 12:01. Any questions on any of this? Anything in the chat, Samantha? Or
nothing in the chat.
Nothing in the chat. Okay. All right. So all right. So with that, now this is available on my GitHub, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Oops. That's yeah. Actually, let me go there now real quick. Yeah, so the repositories here, you can do, let's see, what's it, sports or TCF? TCF, yeah, so that's in there. TCF Pro is the website from, let's see, and then there's Observer. This is from the last session. You can go there and then clone that repository, and so on and so on. So you can download the code yourself and then mess around with it. And if there's something broken, tell me, so. All right. So go back here. All right. All right, so I mentioned Java IDEs. I use IntelliJ IDEA. The latest version is 2021.3.3, although there's an early access release for 2022 dot something. I just noticed this morning. Another popular one is from the Eclipse Foundation, the Eclipse IDE, and you can get that one here. I always like the debate between Eclipse and IntelliJ, and one is free, one isn't. You can get a community version of IntelliJ, but I do pay for the ultimate version, and I will say this: I get that and WebStorm, which is also provided by JetBrains, who makes IntelliJ, and it's $125 a year. And since I'm using it all the time, for me it's worth it. So, what's also becoming popular now is the Microsoft Visual Code Studio. And I've seen some presentations with some of the speakers who use this, and it looks quite nice, to be honest. I have not experimented with this, and also the NetBeans has been around quite some time, and version 13, and it was, I forget who had it before, but it wound up in the Apache Foundation. So that's something within the last couple of years that's relatively new. All right, local Java groups. This is a repeat from the last session here. But if you're new, if you weren't at the last session, I'm one of the 4 co-directors of this Java group, and that's our website there. The New York Java folks, New York Java SIG has been around since, I want to say 1996 thereabouts. Frank Greco. Has been leading that ever since, and he has a team as well. So javasig.com is their website. So I started the ACG&J Java group in 2001, so I'm not too far behind Frank. Across the Delaware is the Philadelphia Java group, or Philly Jug, and they're pretty active. The Jersey City Java user group is relatively new, I would say, over the last maybe 2 to 3 years. And interestingly, Amatai Schleier runs this remotely. I think he's in Europe somewhere. That's one of a little fun fact I learned over the past year or so. So you can check those folks out. This was one that was running up in Albany area, and they had moved their venues a few times, and I think I presented about 4 or 5 times, or maybe even more. Unfortunately, they're restructuring. the person who, Dan Patsy, you see there, moved away to the West Coast. Now he's back. So I reached out to him once a couple of years ago, and I'm not sure what they're doing. But that's a shame because they had a nice group of folks. The New England Java group too. I think they're actually actively looking to restart because they pretty much shut down when COVID hit. Us as the Garden State group, we actually met with them more recently to help them maybe go nonprofit and things like this. So this is, we like to be involved in the Java community. So we are part of the micro profile working group, and we're involved in, helping out with their, releases and, marketing and all those kinds of activities. And then we also have adopted the Jakarta the Jakarta NoSQL specification. Jakarta EE has about 30 of them. All right, so you can check that out. And they encourage Java groups to adopt. So part of that is my contribution to open source in the NoSQL, which is obviously opposite of a relational database. So MongoDB, Cassandra, these are examples of NoSQL databases. Barry Bird, who is a big part of TCF this year, he's one of the co-directors of the Garden State Java group. He's involved in New York and all that. He has his Java 2 for Dummies book. This is an old cover, picture of a cover. It says now updated with the scoop on JDK5, and God knows how long that was ago. Head First, the Head First series of books, they're very good. The writing style is different, and the use of of pictures and everything else. It's really an easy read to understand what's going on, what they're trying to teach. This is my contact info. Twitter, my website. My portfolio page has a list of ready to, or almost ready to present, or generic. Some of them might need updating if everybody asks me to do one of them, and then I'll update it accordingly. But the talks today are updated. The one from yesterday, which is getting started with Jakarta NoSQL and MongoDB, is also updated. And kind of early for one of those, but we it's nice to end the talk with something that's celebratory. So so with that, I mean, let's see. Let me go to, I have a minute or so. If there's any questions, I'll quickly go to the Jakarta EE. Here's the specifications. So there's the platform, web profile, and core profile. This is new for Jakarta EE10. And then these are the individual specs. All right, so config is going to be new. That's in the process of putting together. CDI is very, very important, used quite a bit. Here's the enterprise beans. So I thought they were going to deprecate that, but that could be. Let's see, there's NoSQL. Here we go. So NoSQL, it's under development. You see our logo here. We're one of the adopters. There is going to be a Jakarta data that's being proposed right now. I'm going to be involved in that one. So more to come on that. But so this is a way that you can get to learn some of the specifications in Jakarta EE. Our website, we have Venkat Subramaniam speaking on April 5th. If you're interested, it's virtual. And if you ever heard Venkat, you definitely, you're in for a treat if you've never heard from him before. So that's, yeah, that's pretty much it. Questions? We've got 5 minutes left. I don't know if anybody wants to talk about anything or.
Sure. So I think one question that, folks always get confused on is, what's now the difference between Java SE and the Jakarta EE?
Right, one's a standard edition, and then one's the enterprise. So the enterprise is more involved for making e-commerce applications, for example, and Java SE is more for just regular Java apps, and the applets too. Back historically, so that's different. That's a difference between the two. So you can do more of the shopping application, or more of the database app type of applications with defined endpoints and things like that.
Yeah, because he always had the EJBs. I'm glad to see EJBs are gone.
Yeah, I don't think you're alone in that assessment. I don't know if I mentioned it in the last session or this session, but EJBs they're very hard to understand.
Oh yeah, I did a bunch of EJB work in the early 2000s, and first and only time I ever used EJBs.
Yeah, you could probably, that's how Spring evolved, by the way. The Spring framework was an answer to that, and that came out around 2006, I want to say, maybe even earlier, but I think it was more introduced to the Java community around 2006. So there were some conferences that I attended where I learned about Spring, and Spring itself has really just exploded.
It's huge.
Just all their projects are amazing, so. But yeah, so Spring's another option for it's all Java, it's all Java programming, but then it relies on some of the enterprise edition stuff as well. Yeah, good stuff. I mean, I always laugh when people say Java is dead, but it's far from it. So, let's see. Oh, do we know what the largest Java app is? Wow, that's a good question, Chuck. I don't know.
I mean, I remember Corel used to try to use Java, but for I guess the drawing.
Yeah, there's a few. I mean, there's some out there that are kind of involved, and there's a lot of good ones. It takes a while to actually go through everything. There's the cargo tracker that Reza Rahman has put together. It's pretty involved. There's always a pet store application somewhere out there. Yeah, but I don't know what the biggest one would be. That's something to look up.
I think one of my RC flight simulators is Java based.
Really?
Yeah, I've worked on some very big Java apps, but they were all e-commerce and WebSphere apps. Ran on WebSphere.
Mm-hmm. Oh, WebSphere, yeah, geez.
Yeah, no, I always.
They don't exist anymore, right? That's that was IBM, wasn't it?
IBM, yeah, it's
IBM, right? Yeah, they still have that, right? There's it was WebLogic. That was BEA Systems. Yeah, that got bought out by Oracle, by the way. So, but yeah, WebLogic was the other application server, and you got Wildfly by Red Hat. Quarkus is a real popular framework because it's basically has the Kubernetes deployment in mind. Payara has their own web server. Tommy Tribe, Tom EE, or from Tommy Tribe. So Micronaut is another one. Spring, of course, and Helidon is one they've been around for about 4 years now.
Yeah, WebLogic used to be really, really big. Some of our, I think it's some of our Illusion products are actually come bundled with that server, WebLogic.
Yeah, that's
out of the box package.
Yeah, I don't know what town it is, but you'll be able to see their site off of 78, like around the Summit area, or just between Summit and Bridgewater, for example. But of course, then that disappeared when they got bought out. But yeah.
Question, Michael. Why do you think Python became so popular, given that it's so mature and capable? What's going on there?
Yeah, I think you cut out a little bit, but I think your question was, why has Python become more popular?
Yes, because Java
Okay,
is
I
very
heard that
less
correctly.
than mature.
Yeah,
And Python.
Python is, yeah, and you'll hear more from Chuck in the next two sessions, but you know, Python is more, I think for machine learning and things like that. And it is a little bit easier, you know, to learn, right? Does that sound accurate, Chuck?
Yeah, I guess it could be, but I guess the hurdle is you don't have to compile anything, you don't bytecode anything.
Yeah, that's,
It's really when you're, you know, when you want your write some code and execution cycle to be really tight, you're just trying to figure out how to make something go. You're making something small, and I say small, but I did have someone in my talk a couple of years ago that had millions of lines of Python, and of course it was 2.7. He was lamenting the fact that somehow that all had to get converted to 3.0.
yeah.
So.
Yeah, we're currently still in 3.x, right? I think that's the latest, like 3.7
Yeah,
or
it's
something.
3 something, yeah.
Yeah, I've actually learned a bit of Python. We offered a 6-day, this was back in 2018, Chuck, I think. Those of you who weren't around earlier, Chuck and I work at the same ExxonMobil site. But they offered a 6-day Python course, and it was really good. I started doing some Python work on my data analysis in polymer physics that I do. And a lot of the researchers that come to the company, especially the younger ones, were exposed to Python in their research work. So that's been, you know, been kind of carried through. There's not been many people at our site that do Java at all.
Yeah, well, in fact, Python's great as glue.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, machine learning, it's all in the TensorFlow library, and you just add a little Python glue and you're done. Or you want to do some scientific computation, you use SciPy or NumPy, and then you write a few loops and a little bit if and then else, and read your data. You're done. All the heavy lifting gets done by libraries. So if you're writing something performant or a library of some kind, then you're probably going to write it in something else and then call it from Python when you want to do quick and dirty stuff.
Yeah, there's,
and it's not always quick and dirty.
Well, you know, one of the earliest things I learned, you know, is that, you know, you choose a programming language by, you know, you choose the best one for what it can do for you, depending on the application. So sometimes C++ might be better than Java, or vice versa, or Python, or you know what have you. So
and it also depends on what you learn, what your first language is, right?
Yep.
If you know Java and that's all you know, then everything looks like a great Java app, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
But I'm glad I learned Python, and you know, so I actually put together a web front end using Python. It was a MongoDB database with a Python front end, and so that was a nice little project.
Yeah, we use Python to whip together small web applications to vet our research. So the scientists, you know, they're trying out their functions and all their different research calculations, and then we just wrap it with a little bit of Python, and now it's a web page using Flask, and you're done.
Yep. Yeah. So that's right. Flask was something I used. Django, I think, is another one. And what was I going to say? Trying to remember, but that's okay. But yeah, so I don't know what time we're supposed to start this next session.
25.
25. Okay, maybe a couple.